We need to see a ceasefire. We need to see the end of violence against civilians, women and children losing their lives.
While meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron today, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau repeated their joint call towards Israel and Hezbollah. This statement came from Canada, France, the U.S., other G7 allies, and other countries that support Israel in this. It says it's time for a 3-week ceasefire at the Lebanon border, as the attacks present an unacceptable risk for a broader regional conflict. But today, this was the Israeli Prime Minister's response that he will continue to hit Hezbollah with full force and that Israel won't stop until it achieves all of its goals. Israel kept up strikes on Lebanon today, including an attack in a southern Beirut suburb. Meanwhile, Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister confirmed the identities of 2 Canadians killed in Lebanon, and Mélanie Joly condemned their deaths in an apparent IDF strike, saying, "We refuse to let civilians bear the cost of this conflict." Israel's military said Hezbollah also fired more than 175 rockets at Israel today, and some 60,000 Israelis have been displaced from the northern part of the country since the October 7th attacks. So, with tens of thousands of Canadians in Lebanon, how is Israel approaching this escalating conflict? Iddo Moed is Israel's ambassador to Canada, and he joins me here live in the studio. Ambassador, thank you for coming in today.
Thank you for having me, David.
We've talked many times about civilian casualties. Now we have Canadian casualties in this conflict. Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly condemned the killing of these 2 Canadians, 74-year-old Hussein Tabaja and 69-year-old Daad Tabaja. What do you have to say to Canada on this conflict now that 2 Canadians have been killed?
First and foremost, of course, as you know, I've said it many times before, Israel laments any killing of any civilian in this conflict. And we've been trying to do our utmost to avoid that. We've been trying to do whatever is possible to make sure that civilians stay out of harm's way. We have sent pamphlets, we inform people, we even call their homes to make sure that they are staying out of harm's way. We do everything we can so that it will be clear we are targeting Hezbollah, terrorist organization, who has been firing into Israel thousands and thousands of rockets, having killed 48 people, including 12 children playing football in a soccer field. And what is very necessary for all of us to understand that Israel is involved here in a conflict that was started by Hamas and Hezbollah out of its own will, joined on October the 8th, saying they will continue to support Hamas by firing into Israel as long as the war in Gaza continues. So we have a terrorist organization that holds us hostage in the north, sending out tens of thousands of people off their homes, killing people, shooting at random at civilian concentrations. And what the international community expects us to say is, well, you know, let's just stop, hold your people away from their homes, expose your people to danger, and take the word of Hassan Nasrallah that he will not kill anymore.
These 2 Canadians, the Tabajas, they were fleeing their home. And their son says they were stuck in traffic of all the people trying to get away before the strike came from the IDF, and they were sitting in their car when they were killed. I mean, what do you know about this incident? We've talked many times about the precision, you say, the IDF uses, how you're going after very specific targets. They were stuck in traffic when they were killed. Who were you going for when they ended up getting killed?
You know that the specifics of that incident are still investigated. We very much like to know what happened, what exactly transpired there. But we have to remember the broader picture. They knew that they had to get away from their homes. They knew that Hezbollah has been installing their weaponry and shooting out of homes, out of villages, not out of military camps, actually inside civilian population concentrated areas for many, many years. So actually all Lebanese had a choice either to take responsibility and make sure that Hezbollah gets away from this border region. The government of Lebanon had the responsibility to do that. The Lebanese army had the responsibility to do that. Actually, the United Nations Security Council had the responsibility to do that. And it didn't happen up until now. So when now on the Israeli side there are casualties, there is damage, there is a continuous barrage of rockets, 8,000 rockets of them, and Israel is starting to shoot back, and unfortunately, very unfortunately, also civilians get killed. We get the question, and I wonder whether anybody in the Lebanese government would take this incident under their responsibility and say, well, maybe we've did something wrong. Maybe
what is
we
their
put
responsibility,
our own civilians
though?
in harm's way.
But what is their responsibility? I mean, you can't go in as a state and force people to leave their homes should they choose not to. I mean, is that what you're suggesting Lebanon should have done? I mean, I know these are dual nationals, but they were leaving. and they were killed as they were making their way out.
Resolution 1701, United Nations Security Council resolution, stipulates very, very clearly that the area adjacent to the border with Israel should be free of any kind of armed militias or terrorist organization or anything. There is a special United Nations force, including French soldiers there, that are supposed to implement this. They see the Lebanese army, the Lebanese government, and the United Nations have witnessed Hezbollah instill themselves in those areas. So it's their responsibility now, today, that's their responsibility to make sure that civilians stay out of harm's way. Beyond that, Israel, before attacking, made very, very clear to all inhabitants of southern Lebanon that they should leave their homes because it's going to be very dangerous. So there are several layers of responsibility. And I think that Israel, from its perspective, did its utmost. But we cannot go into Lebanon and call or knock on doors or create a better highway for people to get away faster. It's the Lebanese government's responsibility and the United Nations' responsibility.
But it was your missile, rocket, whatever was used in this strike that did this. And I know you say, and we've talked about this many times, that you give the prior notice, but maybe the prior notice isn't enough. Maybe it's not long enough, maybe it's not clear enough, maybe it's not specific enough, because here we are a couple of days after they're killed and we still don't have clarity as to why it happened, but we know they were trying to leave, they got stuck, and they're sitting in their car on a road when they died.
David, I cannot tell you exactly what transpired in that incident. It may have been a misfiring of Hezbollah. It may have been many other issues. So putting the blame automatically in Israel doesn't really change much what happened on that case. We have to know the details, and then we can refer to it. But it's very lamentable. We don't want anybody killed in anywhere, not in the southern part of Israel, of the border, or the northern part of the border. We want peace. We want to live together with the Lebanese and the Palestinians and all our neighbors, and this is what we've been trying to do since the inception of the State of Israel. What we are finding ourselves fighting against is a sort of enormous mechanism that was set up by the Iranian regime. And actually, I think that all international efforts that are devoted now to create the ceasefire should be directed at Iran, because they are the ones that direct the Hezbollah. They are the ones that weaponize Hezbollah, finance them, train them, and help them to execute all their attacks. They are a proxy of Iran. So if you're looking for answers, they should be in Tehran and not in Jerusalem.
But I don't think anybody truly expects Iran or Hezbollah or Hamas to be reasonable, good actors in the community of nations the way they expected of Israel. This is one of the challenges in this, right? And I appreciate, you feel the double standard that is applied to your country versus them, but terrorist organizations don't come on shows like this and have conversations about their responsibilities in international law, right? So I appreciate what you're saying, that Iran is funding this and financing this and fueling this in many, many ways. But you have now not an insignificant group of countries calling for a ceasefire. 2 Canadians are killed. A French citizen, we found out, has been killed. And Prime Minister Netanyahu has pretty much rejected it out of hand. I mean, it seems like this pattern continues, that civilians die, there's a call for escalation, the Prime Minister says, it's the other people's fault, we're not changing anything. How do we get to peace?
David, I see for some reason the same reality from a very different perspective. So we see a peaceful country that has been out there to create a safe homeland for the Jewish people. The only place, this is our ancestral homeland, where we've created an independent Jewish state, which was recognized by the United Nations and the international community. There are some who are out there to destroy that country. They are terrorists. They are terrorist regime. Canada also designated the Iranian regime as terrorist state. So what you're saying is actually, you, Israel, you're a democracy, so maybe you just give in to the terrorists.
No.
So just let me finish this. So Prime Minister just reiterated the new goal, the fourth goal that the government has put in place in this war, and that is to make sure that the inhabitants of the northern part of Israel can return safely to their homes. This is our goal. These are families, these are children, these are people whose livelihood has been destroyed by Hezbollah. It's not the livelihood of the people of southern Lebanon that's been destroyed, although they understood, and some of them already fled the area, but Hezbollah has been out there instilled and placed by Iran in order to be a sort of a leverage for Iran in case that some war erupts between Israel and Iran, so they have the Hezbollah as a proxy. And that's a lethal situation for Israel. We cannot tolerate this anymore. It's been almost a year. Now we've decided that this is enough. Enough is enough. After 11 and a half months, finally, the government of Israel decided that we want to be able to move our people back to their homes. And that's what we are doing.
So, look, and I appreciate that. And the people of northern Israel have been forcibly, relocated because of what happened, by the threat of Hezbollah. They weren't forced against their will. They've been offered security away from where the rockets are mostly being fired. But your quarrel is with Hezbollah. And Lebanon is a sovereign state, as you heard the president of France say. And now there's missile strikes and other attacks in the capital, in Beirut. Some of them are in residential areas. And President Macron said today, he's like, I don't want Lebanon to become another Gaza. And here we are seeing the argument that because Hezbollah is in there, we need to take the actions we need to take in our own national security interests. Civilians are dying. That's unfortunate. But this is what needs to be done. I mean, how do you expect the rest of the world to accept that so easily when their citizens are dying so you can move your citizens back to safety?
So first and foremost, we are not talking about citizens. When we attacked the Daad, the area of Beirut that was attacked only for the fourth time in all these barrage, that we are hitting specific weapon depots of Hezbollah and their missile firing sites, it's the only fourth time that we are hitting Beirut. Very, very targeted operation, intelligence-based, taking out the aerial commander of Hezbollah, who's been responsible, by the way, also for attacking the ships and helping and supporting and directing the Houthis in Yemen, in the Red Sea. So that's an international terrorist. He was targeted, he was killed, nobody else got killed. So just one second.
No, but just to clarify, I wasn't referring to him as a citizen. I was speaking about Hussein Tabaja and Daad Tabaja. I maybe didn't make myself clear, but I wanted to let you know that's where I was coming from there.
So I understand that, but we can't tell from the number of casualties that we have in Lebanon who has been Hezbollah and who is not. Hezbollah is hiding the numbers just as Hamas did. They have no interest in showing the world that Israel is actually very, very precise in its targeting of Hezbollah terrorists. There may be civilians dying. Of course, we know that we are aware that that's a possibility, but that's why in advance we have notified everybody and anybody through any means possible, including direct calls to homes of people that we knew were living adjacent to a weapon site, to let them know that we know that they live there and that they should leave their homes. So we do whatever we can, as much as we can, to clarify to people who are in harm's way to get away. That's the situation. This is how Israel is handling itself. And so when Prime Minister says our goal is to get our people back, that's our goal. And stopping now and having some kind of a ceasefire agreement with a terrorist organization is something that is highly questionable for many people. I think this is also something that we are thinking about in Israel. How do we continue from where we are right now? And I assume that you will ask that in a second, and I will tell you that it is very clear. To end this, it's not just Hamas, it's not just Hezbollah. Iran needs to be addressed. Iran needs to understand that their role, their destructive role in the Middle East is such that it's going to create this kind of a broader war. It's not Israel, it's Iran.
But if this continues the way it is going, right, and I am not dismissing your national security concerns and your concern for your people and your country, but Hussein Tabaja and Daad Tabaja had people who loved them. We've spoken to their sons. They're a 74 and a 69-year-old. They're not Hezbollah. They are not combatants. They were Canadian citizens gone back to the homeland for their golden years. A 21-day ceasefire at least creates the opportunity for other people in their situation to move safely away as you're telling them to, but which clearly can't be accomplished with the way the conflict is going right now. Their deaths show that.
David, can you tell me what happened before the 12 children, Drew's children, were killed in the soccer field? Who in the world, the day before or the day after, cared about the ceasefire? No one. Because they were on the Israeli side. So now, all of a sudden, this double standard is screaming out loud, hey, Israel, why don't you stop? But when people are shot in their homes, when people who are protecting their village are shot just because they are patrolling in their village just to make sure that it's safe, even if it's vacant, they are being slaughtered. I don't see anybody in the international community going an inch to try and say, well, let's try and let's calm this, because there is no escalation there, because Israel is actually trying to absorb this and say, well, we're in a defensive posture and we'll see what happens. But at some point in time, somebody must also understand in the international community that Israel has also interest. And this is an untenable situation, because what Hezbollah is out to do, and we know that because we've seen that the last 11 and a half months, they are there to escalate and to harm and to hurt more Israelis. So their way forward is the liberation of Jerusalem. That's how Hezbollah sees it. There is no compromise there.
Right.
There has never been a compromise, and there's not going to be a compromise. The compromise needs to be reached in another way, and it has to be in such a way that will clarify to all the players that it's not worth their while to continue this kind of tit-tat or attack against civilians in Israel.
But if nobody makes the first move, Ambassador, and everyone just wants to be the person that makes the last move, this will just go on forever, and we will have a situation where Canadians, French, Australian citizens, other Western countries that support Israel and back Israel in a significant way are going to have
David,
an increasing body count.
You forget the last 11 months.
Oh, I do not, sir.
So in those 11 months, Israel was trying to create a sort of a balance, let's say, with Hezbollah. We were warning, I did it also here on your show, we do it bilaterally in diplomatic discussions, we do it in the United Nations, Security Council, everywhere we can. When there is a routine discussion of 1701, we are saying, guys, if this doesn't stop, this is going to escalate. At some point in time, this cannot be tolerated anymore. We've warned the world, we've told the world, we've told everybody, the international community. For some reason, there is this tone deafness to what we are saying, and only when it comes to other people, all of a sudden, there is an emergency, and all of a sudden we have to talk about stopping this escalation. This is not about Israel. This is about Iran, who is out there to destroy the state of Israel. Iran needs to be stopped. Iran needs to be mitigated. That's the source of evil, and this is why the whole region is suffering.
Just one last question. Have you spoken directly with the Foreign Affairs Minister or anyone from the Canadian government about the deaths of Mr. and Mrs. Tabaja and offered them any explanation or a timeline on when Canada can expect an explanation as to what happened here? You say you don't know. When can we know?
When we have information about this, we will make sure that information passes to those who are responsible or are connected to this, but this has not happened yet. I would like, just before we finish, to remind all of us of one thing. We have been under this war for almost a full year. In this year, 101 hostages now are still held in Gaza in tunnels. Nobody speaks about them. Nobody really worries about them. I don't see any kind of a leader in the world that says today we have to liberate those hostages, even if it's said, and it is said, I must admit.
A ceasefire and release of hostages.
Prime Minister Trudeau mentioned that, but I don't think that the same effort is being done to save these people as others. And I wonder, this is something that is at the core of Israel's war right now. If you look around in Israel, you'll see in Israel's mindset there is only one thing, and that is to get our 101 hostages back. There is nothing else that interests Israelis more than to get our people back home. And for some reason, this has become a sort of a by issue that is just mentioned. And I think that if we want to achieve any change in the Middle East, that is at the core of it.
Well, look, we have had family members of hostages on this show, and look, there is a tragedy going in a lot of directions in this conflict. I mean, the death toll in Gaza is enormous, as you know, even though the numbers are disputed. The hostage situation is awful, as you well know, and I think the world is holding its breath that we don't have another thing happening on another northern border that gets to this scale. I think that's the concern, and why the President of France and the Prime Minister of Canada are saying what they said today. But look, these are always difficult conversations, but I appreciate you doing it, and I appreciate you coming in. Iddo Moed, Israel's ambassador to Canada. Thank you for your time today, sir.
Thank you for having me.